a little after 10 a.m., and so we'll go ahead and get started with this October 10th, 2019 meeting of the Municipal Solid Waste Management Resource Recovery Advisory Council. I'm Holly Holder, the current president, and I'd like to thank everyone for being here this morning, and like to first start off with, I guess, welcoming new council members, which some that aren't new but got reappointed. And so I'll go through the list that I have. So for position 1, an elected official from a municipality with a population fewer than 25,000, I'd like to welcome David Dillard from Paint Rock. Is it Judge? Judge Dillard. Judge Dillard, welcome. Thank you. And then position 4, a representative from the financial community, one who has been on the board for several years, David Yonke, who sent me an email and apologized that he is doing a little R&R this week, so he will not be here this morning. So we'll appoint him to anything that comes up today. We'll make sure he's duly appointed if you're listening, Dave. Position 6, another reappointee, a person experienced in the management and operation of composting or recycling facility, or educator with knowledge in the design and management of solid waste facilities, Risa Weinberger. Risa. Welcome, Risa. And then position 7, a representative from a solid waste management organization composed primarily of commercial operators, Scott Trebus. Scott? And the last position, 8, an elected official from a municipality with a population between 100,000 but more or less than 750,000, Trent Patterson, and Trent's unavailable to be here today as well. So we still have a few positions that were unfilled, and we will move forward with everyone. And like I said, welcome to everyone. So at this time, I'll follow our normal protocol, and we'll go around the diocese and just introduce ourselves and give the position that we represent. We'll start, Tiffany.
Kevin Martin with Liberty Tire Recycling, representing the tire industry.
Jeff Mayfield, North Texas Municipal Water District, represents a public solid waste district or authority.
Commissioner Wolverton, Guadalupe County, representing counties under 130,000 population.
Maurice Pitts, Lee County Commissioner, and I represent counties of any size.
Good morning, Scott Trebus. I work with Republic Services, and I represent a commercial operation in solid waste.
I'm Risa Weinberger with Risa Weinberger and Associates, and I represent composters and educators.
Richard McHale with the City of Austin. I represent, I'm an official from the city or county solid waste agency.
Good morning, Chuck Rivette. I work for Waste Management. I represent a solid waste professional with experience managing or operating a commercial solid waste landfill.
And I'm Holly Holder, and I represent a professional engineer from a private engineering firm with experience in design and management of solid waste facilities. I'm with Park Hill Smith & Cooper from Lubbock, Texas.
Good morning, Scott Pasternak with Burns & McDonnell, and I represent the general public.
Heather Douglas with the North Texas Corporate Recycling Association. I represent a private environmental conservation organization.
Good morning, I'm Cheryl Murgo with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, and I represent the planning region.
Good morning, Judge Dillard, representing Concho County, and representing counties under 25,000.
Good morning, Earl Lott, Director of the Waste Permits Division with TCEQ.
Good morning, Chance Gooden with the TCEQ Municipal Solid Waste Permits.
Good morning, Kristen Hernandez with Municipal Solid Waste Permits.
Diane Barnes, MSW Permits.
Jaspinder Singh, MSW Permits.
David Greer, the Public Education Section, TCEQ.
Gene Muller with the Waste Permits Division.
Mario Perez with MSW Permits.
Kulayaki, MSW Permits.
Helen Gilbert Wilburn.
Megan Henson, Scrap Tire Program and Waste Permits Division.
Anja Chalias, West Permits Division.
Kimberly Lyle, Texas Association of Regional Councils.
Ken May, Capillary Council of Governments.
Sarah Nichols, Keep Texas Beautiful.
Cassidy Campbell, North Central Texas Council of Governments.
Larry Lane, Texas Disposal System.
Leah Robichaud, TCEQ Occupational Licensing.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And at this time, I will turn it over to Earl Lott. Earl, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, members. Feels like it's been a while since I've seen y'all. I think I missed the last meeting. I was out for some reason. But welcome, everyone. And I just have a few updates to provide this morning. First things first, we are busy with legislative implementation right now. We're starting that process anyway. We had 3 bills that affected the Municipal Solid Waste Program that passed last session. They are House Bill 1331, which increased the agency's application fee for municipal solid waste permit applications from $150 to $2,000, plus the $50 administrative fee that is included with the application. So the new fee for a new permit application will be $2,050. And the other bill we're implementing is House Bill 1435, and it requires the agency to inspect any new or amended permit applications that we received. So that bill will just require that we go out and do a site inspection prior to permitting. And then lastly is House Bill 1953, which is exempts plastic pyrolysis operations. So we're currently going to be working on the draft rules, and those rules will be going to the commission agenda for a proposal on February 28th. And they will be open for comment period until March the 30th of 2020. And right now, we're also doing an evaluation internally to see if we want to make any other rule changes in the 330 rules at this time. We haven't made a final decision on that. We're just exploring that as a possible option. So more to come if if we decide on that. So to make some changes there. Any questions on the ledge implementation at this point?
Just one I had on the inspections prior to permitting. And I guess you're still developing how all that's going to look and how it's going to roll out.
Right.
Have seen a tick up in the number of inspections and sites in our region. In fact, in 2 of the 3 regions that I work in. And I'm assuming that was all a part of the last legislative session. And I know that's not you guys. That's
right.
More enforcement.
Office of Compliance and Enforcement,
So,
right.
But where I was headed, I guess I was wondering, would those same inspectors from the region be the ones that would go out and inspect those, or would those be people from your office?
So right now, we're contemplating that municipal solid waste permitting staff will be the ones to go out and look at these sites. Because the intent was to look at them prior to permitting them, so we're the ones responsible for permitting, so it only makes sense that we would go out. There may be a circumstance where we ask the region to assist us from time to time, but it'll more than likely be Chance and his folks going out, which is a really good idea.
No, I think
Put your hands on the site.
That's exactly where I was headed. That's the best thing. When you're designing a site and you've seen it and actually understand the characteristics of the site, it makes that design, and in your case, that review of that permit application much more meaningful. So
right. And we were practicing that anyway prior to this legislation. We had started going out to all these sites, especially the new permitted ones. So just to kind of do a general site assessment, but this formalizes it now.
Earl, this may be a rhetorical question. I'll just throw it out there on the pyrolysis / waste gasification facilities. The language in the bill is somewhat nebulous. It just says that those facilities will be exempt from MSW permits. But facilities is not really tied down. does that mean the pyrolysis unit itself only? What if, for instance, they have a dirty MRF in the front end to sort material to go into the pyrolysis unit indoor waste gasification? And I'm not asking for an answer on that. I'm just saying, as you're writing the rules,
Right,
you may
consider
wanna,
that.
you may want to think one step further, because no one's going to have a thermal unit without having some kind of management process in the front end as well, right?
Right. And in my interpretation of that bill, it means the unit itself. And there was language that if it's a standalone unit, they can't store waste
Okay.
over a period of
All
time.
right, well, you're way ahead of the curve.
I think that implies that a MRF would not be contemplated
Okay.
to be exempt, so. Anything more on ledge implementation? If not, I'll roll into the next thing. So y'all are probably all aware of Tropical Storm Imelda that dumped over 40 inches of rain on the Houston and Beaumont area. And the governor proclaimed that area a disaster under the governor's disaster proclamation. And I'm happy to report that we did not have any catastrophic failures at any of the landfills. As a matter of fact, our staff was working hard to try to get them up and operational. The biggest challenge during these flood events is just getting to the sites. All the roads are flooded to them and whatnot. But I think we processed over 14 temporary authorizations under the governor's emergency declaration to suspend certain activities during those times. So I know the recovery efforts continue, but kind of an update on Chance and his staff and what a great job they do responding to that.
Yeah, I'd like to add that. We had quite a few of our sites impacted by that, and Chance, your team was phenomenal at responding to our request and trying to get them up and running as quick as possible, so thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Let's see, a couple of other things I'll just update y'all on. We're continuing our efforts on streamlining. Y'all have heard me say over the last couple of years, we're working to really streamline our timeframes. Our processing time we have for reviewing the applications. We're continuing that theme agency-wide with the adoption of what's called a Lien concept. And this is a program that was adopted by EPA a few years ago, and it was proven to work. And we're looking at exploring that further in the Waste Permits Division. And Chance and his group will be starting on that fairly soon, and just looking at our business processes and how we can streamline that even further than we have today. So, there's quite an effort to make the applications a lot more clear to where it reduces the number of deficiencies that an applicant would receive during the technical review process. So we're going to continue on that concept, more electronics, utilizing technology to help us become more efficient. So. And let's see, lastly, the regional solid waste management plans for all the councils of governments will be due in 2022. We will start accepting those applications earlier than that date. So I'm sure all the COGs will be coming in. And basically, that's all I had for my updates. I'll be glad to answer any questions y'all might have.
Do you want to have anything for Earl this morning? Those, the regional COG applications, exactly what is that for? That's not related to some of them that are updating their regional plans currently, is it?
No, they all come due in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, they're 20-year plans, and so that's the next due date.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, they will have to come in and get reapproved by the agency.
Anyone? We're letting you off easy, Earl.
I appreciate it.
All right, so that will bring us up to, well, one other thing, I guess, David Greer's here this morning. Would you mind if we ding him a little bit on some of the recycling
Sure thing.
bills that were going on, as long as we're
always good to pick on David Greer.
Always good to pick on David Greer. You showed up, so might as well call you up. Good morning, David.
I appreciate it. It's David Greer. I'm with the manager of the public education section. I've got two updates for you on Senate Bill 649. Senate Bill 649 is the requirement for the agency to do prepare a plan that would enhance recycling in the state, essentially provide a recycling market development plan for the state. And we are working on that. The two updates I wanted to share, I was fortunate to meet with the program director at the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tourism. They're excited about the work that was going forward and expressed their support and desire to assist in any way that they can as we move forward with that. And so we're looking forward to some good participation with them on this process. Additionally, y'all that have been on the council for a while know that when we did the study on the economic impacts of recycling, we utilized a shortened URL, txrecyclingstudy.org, and had a communication gov delivery in there that we could use to provide updates. And for the time being, at least, we're going to continue to utilize that to get word out to anyone that's interested in how we move forward with this project. So that's my updates on 649. For Senate Bill 1376, we are continuing to make progress on drafting initial rules for proposal and hoping to get those to proposal in January this coming year. So we're making progress on that. That's Senate Bill 1376. It provides exemptions. It expands the exemption to school districts for recycling programs. In the statute, it had been at 5,000. School districts with more than 5,000 students were required to have a recycling program. And it is now increased to 10,000, and then it provides an exemption for municipalities and other state and local governments for a hardship case. And so working on putting that in rule. If anyone's got any questions.
Any questions for David?
Thank you.
We look forward to more updates in the future.
Sure.
David, I just had a very quick question. So for the plan, the recycling plan, is that something that's being prepared internally, or are you going to be using external folks for that, or both?
We are planning to put out a solicitation for that to hire a contractor to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Well, all right. Chance, good morning.
Good morning. Since Earl touched on the lien management that we're doing, some of you that submit projects to us probably have noticed that we don't always give you 30 days to respond to us. In the past, we always put in the letter, hey, get back to us in 30 days. And there's some things that don't take 30 days, and so we do change the day in which you respond back to us, just because it doesn't take that much time to get what we're asking for. And duly, that's some of the things that we're doing as a part of that lien management. It doesn't take that 30 days for us to review something that's not 30 days worth of review. So we are actually we've changed some of those days in-house. When we get something through the door, we'll review it in a lot less time and respond back. So that's all a part of that lien management. Actually, we rolled that out this year. We have been doing it just on a case-by-case with certain projects, but not really overhaul the overall time frame for all of our projects. But this year, we actually are overhauling the time frame for all of our projects and taking that model that we did last year about, hey, this one could go a little quicker than the norm. But now it's become the norm. So we're hoping that we'll get a little bit more efficient by that. So there may be exceptions if there's an issue that needs to go above. We can adjust for that and go through an extension for allowing more time to actually respond versus a review. So anyway.
Well, let me just add, Chance is kindly saying we're going to be, for the waste facility operators, he's kindly saying we're going to be putting a lot more pressure on your consultants to get us information back, so.
Well, and I will add to that, Chance, from the consulting standpoint, we've noticed a definite, the time from when we send things that we get a response back from y'all has really shortened up. And it's noticeable. So whatever you're doing, it's being effective.
Well, we're really not focusing, I mean, we're doing it for both sides. The public participation tends to get longer and longer the longer it takes for us to review and respond. And we've heard loud and clear from a lot of people it takes way too long, and you're dragging these things out far too long. And so a part of that is like, let's make a decision and move forward so the public can have a certainty of what the direction we're going, so it's not lingering on. So, all right, I don't know what's going on with this microphone, but I have a lot of feedback up here. So, okay. So staffing, yeah, I think everyone has a org chart in their packet. Just we have 2 vacancies currently. Those vacancies are for engineering specialists. So if anyone knows someone looking to inspire in the environmental world and state government, send them our way. Those positions both close on October 18th. Since last time we met, I told you we had 31 major projects in-house, and today we have 31 major projects in-house. We've received as many as we've issued, so the number stays the same since the last quarter. Let's see, what else? Annual report. Let's talk about the annual report. Everybody get an annual report in their packet or have a booklet? I'll highlight a few things for y'all. We had about 68% response in electronic reporting through STEERS. Out of 531 reports that we received, 363 of those were electronically, so we really appreciate that. Landfills, y'all were about 75%, and processors were following behind about 62%. So anybody you know out there that doesn't report electronically, please, please, please pass the word along that it makes it a lot more efficient and easier for us to put this report together if everyone reports electronically. Okay, so the report. You'll see a lot of things in there that are the same. Page 5 is just a visual of all of our active sites. We have 198 active landfills. It went up a couple from last year. The landfill capacity on page 16. There's 54 years remaining capacity for top 1 landfills. And on page 7, we have 211 active processors. All the COGs have more than 10 years of remaining capacity. The Central Texas COG has at least the least amount with 13 years. And with the amendment we had to Temple Landfill that was issued in April of 2019, that number would likely increase, and that will show up in the next year's report. There was a slight increase in population. This is on page, I guess, 15. Yeah. With over 2.5 million tons that we disposed last year, that makes the per capita disposal rate at 5.5%. I think it was 5.6% last year. So the statewide capacity has decreased to 51 years. We think that probably has a lot to contribute with Hurricane Harvey. Just a contributing factor to that, the increased disposal rate and decrease that capacity. You can find that on page 23 as well. Everyone knows that this is also available online on our webpage. And then for the next year's report, we need to start getting our information submitted. The deadline is November 10th of this year. So we're already starting for the next year's report. So the instructions for that is on the webpage. Again, we'd love everyone to do it electronically. So any questions on that? Anything that somebody wants to bring to our attention that I didn't cover? Okay. Other thing that you may have noticed through a couple of notices that have gone out through the program, there was an update to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, as referred to, some rainfall data. It's significantly changed the line, the imaginary line that we have in Texas, that 25-year line. And so just be cognizant when your submittals to take a look at your surface drainage reports and the design of your leachate contaminant water management systems as it relates to rainfall data, because that's going to affect some of the sites out west, especially your arid exempt status, because the rainfall data has went up. So we put out a couple of notices that through the MSW newsletter, and then we did one specifically. So if you're unaware of that, take a look at our web pages. There's some links there that'll send you to their website, and there's also another link there that sends you to TxDOT's link to that information.
Chancellor, until I left, Mr. Rivette, serving as hydrologist this morning on the board, has printed out some
Oh, awesome.
graphs.
So y'all have a handout.
Well,
Chuck has a handout.
I did the dangerous thing, and I'm sorry, I only got 10 copies, and so you may have to share if you don't mind. But so I took a 283-page report and decided to boil it down to the one page that tells you the whole story. Right?
Okay.
But this is the chart that shows the comparison between what used to be the governing rainfall data, TP40, and now the Atlas 14 data. And to read the chart over to the left, basically all the areas in green got increases. So if you look over in the Houston area where it's a dark green, the 100-year rainfall increased in the 6 to 7 inch rain, 24-hour 100-year rainfall event. It increased from fairly significantly. The blue lines that you see on there, that's the old TP14. 40, sorry, TP40. So the 13 inch per 24 hours was the line that kind of ran through the Houston and Galveston area. And now it's basically almost 19 inches, 18 to 19 inches, fairly significant difference. In terms of practicality, and we've now modeled 2 sites in that area, it basically moves a 100-year rainfall to what had been the 500-year
Wow.
rainfall event in that area. I was surprised in that it's not uniform across the state. I just figured the whole state would get walloped, but you see a large portion of the state is silver. Silver, you'll notice, is not in the legend, but it's inferred, I think, that silver is white, so that means less than 1 inch change one way or the other. So the entire northern half of the state, everything north of maybe Temple, Waco, somewhere in that area. And to your point, you see the green line runs all the way over to Del Rio, Langtree.
Yeah, west.
And those places, have like a 4 inch increase in rainfall and a 4 inch increase in rainfall in Del Rio, where it had been 8 inches. Or 9 inches, depending on how you wanted to interpret the blue lines. That's a 50% increase. That's fairly significant.
Yes.
To them. So the link to that whole report is on the flyer that TCEQ sent out. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So There you go. I just wanted to share that.
And if you deleted the email, just go to our webpage. It'll be there.
Well, and to, follow up what you said about the 25-inch per year line, that's always kind of been
Vertical line.
fairly straight, but, now you're going to see a bulge in it as you get to the junction area. You're going to see that bulge come back and probably move a little bit further west all the way down past Corpus Christi. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
When I say west, it's more southwest.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to think of it roughly as I-35.
Right.
And that's just not the case anymore.
And that's all I have. If there's anything that you think I missed, bring it to my attention and we'll talk about it.
Chance, how does that impact facilities that already have the area exemption and now they're not? They're fine as long as there's no permit
it stays
changes?
as is. It's when they come back in to do something.
Okay.
Yep.
So if they came in for a permit modification, then they would have to update their drainage plan as well, and then that may impact their status as an area exempt.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chance. Next up, Megan Henson with the Business and Program Services section is going to talk to us about the scrap tire numbers and how they've changed. Good morning, Megan. How are you?
Good morning.
And it's on. Well, thank you all for inviting me back. Again, I'm Megan Henson. I'm the work leader of the scrap tire program in the Waste Permits Division. And you may remember the last council meeting, Gene Mueller, the section manager, presented the 2018 scrap tire annual report, and great discussion followed, which we love because we do spend quite a bit of time getting those numbers together. So I'm just here to follow up on some of the questions that y'all had. So I realize now a handout might have been useful for some of the people over here, but this is the graph that generated a lot of the discussion, and this graph shows the end uses for scrap tires for a 5-year period, 2014 to 2018. You can see at the top it captures our main categories that we track, including tire-derived fuel, landfill disposal, crumb rubber, other beneficial use, land reclamation projects using tires, and other recycling. Also on the graph at the top, it shows the total number of tires managed in a year. So in 2014, we have 26.5 million, all the way to 2018 with 45.8 million, which is really, I think, why I'm here, because that is quite a big jump. So again, just to recapture some of the questions from last time. One was, why is there an increase in tires? And also, is Texas receiving tires from other states? And finally, has the use of tire-derived fuel decreased over the years? So I'm going to go through each of those. Just as a reminder, not every registered scrap tire user has to report to TCEQ. We have transporters, scrap tire facilities, and storage sites who report annually. And those numbers are sent to us, and we use those to generate the annual report. And since 2014, the tires have increased by 19 million. And it's a very reasonable question, why has there been such a big increase? One of the easiest reasons to go to is the growing population of Texas. We've seen in the past 5 years, the same reporting period, an increase of about 2 million people. And with that, if you apply the standard formula, which a council member mentioned at the last meeting, of 1 tire per person, we would expect an increase of about 2 million tires. So that does account for some of the increase in tires. And also, we're getting better reporting from authorized facilities. It's kind of interesting. Transporters have actually decreased their reporting since 2016 by about 25%. But in those same years, our authorized facilities have increased by about 5%. So, and we really depend on the authorized facilities for those final numbers, and we do use the transporter numbers to cross-reference, but the authorized facilities are what we look at closely. And also, the big players in the industry are just more consistent with reporting. So your cement kilns, the crumb rubber operations, the storage sites, the really big players report every year very consistently, while some of the smaller players may not report as well. And one big reason that I think has been mentioned before is that TCEQ, in 2017, we started using a standard conversion rate of 20 pounds per passenger tire, where before it was 22.5 pounds and even 25 pounds in some years. But we found in the rules that 20 pounds is mentioned, and we want to be as consistent as possible. So in 2017, when that was applied, we actually saw an increase of 4 million tires just in that small change in the conversion rate. That's a significant amount of tires. And when you look at 2016's numbers and you kind of do some math, you'll see that actually there was not, it looks like a very large increase, but taking that conversion factor or the conversion rate means that it was it wasn't the 4 million jump that we saw. And one thing that we're getting from our regions, it's not showing as much in the reporting, but we're learning from our regions is that more tires are being managed properly and there's less illegal dumping. That's not to say there aren't those sites out there that need cleaned up or there aren't new sites generated, but overall there's less new sites popping up. And along the same lines, we're continuing to clean up those unauthorized sites. So in 2018 alone, we had over 2 million tires removed from unauthorized sites. And if you look at the 2017 and 2018 numbers, it's about a 2 million tire difference, so it could be captured right there. Now the question of are tires coming in to Texas? We hope they're not coming in like that. I mean, he doesn't meet a lot of the rules, like the stickers that are required and all the other things. So anyway, we know that they are coming into Texas. We don't know the number that are coming into Texas. We do know, however, that 1.2 million tires were exported from Texas into border states or other states. New Mexico is one that's a main export, and as well as Colorado, Florida, and some of the other ones nearby. Now moving on to the question of tire-derived fuel. The number of tires used for tire-derived fuel has actually increased over the past 5 years, but the percentage has remained relatively stable since 2015. So the graph on the right shows the bar graph shows the percent and the line graph shows the number of tires. So you can see we're remaining about steady, and we have seen an increase of about 2 million tires used as tire-derived fuel. On the left-hand side, just for reference, I did a little comparison of tire-derived fuel compared to landfill disposal. And you can see landfill disposal has actually increased by 10 million tires in the past 5 years. And there's a number of reasons for that, and I'll get into that here in a minute. So just looking ahead into what the annual reports will look like in the future, there's been a recent change at a major cement kiln where they've implemented new technology and they're able to accept a lot more tires. So this is a very recent change. We probably won't see it reflected in the 2019 report, but we will likely see an increase in tire-derived fuel in 2020 and future years, and especially if they're able to apply that technology at other cement kilns. And so you saw the 10 million tire increase for landfills, and there's, again, a number of reasons. One, if a cement kiln closes, and that's storage site's number one where they go, they can't hold on to those tires till the cement kiln opens back up for production. So the tires are usually sent to a landfill at that point. But also more landfills are applying for processing registration so they can cut tires prior to disposal. And this is being offered because it's a need in the community. You can't dispose of tires whole in a landfill, but there's still a lot of tires being generated in some rural areas, and so we need to offer this service. An example of this is actually Rio Grande City and Starr County. They opened a processing and recycling center near the landfill. It is separate from the landfill, but they used COG funds to obtain a tire cutter so they can offer this service to their residents and have less illegal dumping of tires. And what we're looking to see in the future, we've been in some discussions with industry leaders where modified rubberized asphalt could have widespread application in Texas. Right now, the industry leaders and TxDOT are working on getting some specs put together, so it's not out there yet. There are some small applications, but we're hoping that this will be a future category in our annual report where we can say the number of tires going to rubberized asphalt. And I hope I covered your questions, but I'm happy to answer any more that I may have created.
Does anyone have any questions?
Where is the one major?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Where is the one major new facility?
That is in the Dallas area.
So I was surprised to see that we're actually exporting tires to Florida.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the use there, but I know we also export to Arkansas and some areas with paper mills. New Mexico is the #1 export state, though.
I have a question for Kevin. Do these numbers ring true? I mean, you're our representative and you're in the business.
The numbers look truer today than they have been in the past.
And that's why I was asking. I know several years ago you felt like there was an underreporting.
Right. The TDF demand is, you know, she mentioned cement plants. We have 2 that have come online. There's an additional 1 that is putting in a new process, which was consuming in 14 4 million tires, and they put a new kiln in, and it did not accept tires. So they put some additional equipment in to allow that. So we hope that they get back at least to the 50-60% margin of using tires. That would be in the North Dallas area. Most of the cement plants are using some type of tires, at least along the I-35 corridor. We do export TDF to Louisiana, so that's still a strong market. You know, in crumb rubber, we have Gannon, which produces all crumb. We're actually expanding our line to produce about 40 million pounds a year too. So we have a new customer that we both share, which we'll be making mats and animal mats or whatever for Tractor Supplies. So that's a new addition to the marketplace that we didn't have, a new end market. So that will help with the recycling.
Excellent.
You mentioned that you recovered $2 million from illegal dumping sites in 2018. How many more remain? Can you refresh our memory?
About 14 million.
And one thing I would like to add, we have had some companies come in and talk to us about getting a patent to use rubberized asphalt, I guess it's called. Gene, is that right? Rubberized asphalt? They're working on getting a plan approved through TexasCOG to use it in road construction projects. And I think they have a few of them going in the Austin area for testing. But once that gets approved, they'll be authorized to use it in certain districts, and then they can expand if it's successful. So that should be a significant usage as well.
I'm glad to hear that. I was curious if TxDOT was in this conversation, because I know they look at their asphalt design pretty closely. So I know that's a variant for them to get into rubberized asphalt, but it's good that they're doing that. And I was curious too about I guess hearing about the Rio Grande Valley site used, I guess, COG funds that they got back. So good use of that COG money. On the registration, was there any limit to how many tires they can accept, or is it kind of based on the specific site itself and how much material they can handle?
Sure. For a standard processor registration, they can have 500 tires on the ground or 2,000 in enclosed lockable containers. Unless they're a recycler or they apply for a storage site, then they can increase the capacity. So we do have at least one landfill, City of Brownsville, that has a storage site.
But that's how much they're storing on site. Then I was wondering how much, can the landfill accept? Is there a cap on how much material they can accept once it's been chopped up or quartered or whatever?
I don't believe so, as far as on our side, and none on the MSW side.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. So, of the ones that are being processed, are the majority of those sort of freshly new tires to be recycled, or they've been on a legal dump site for a while? I know that, I remember that the older ones had a lower burn ratio or something.
Right, and we've heard from the cement kilns they do prefer fresh off-the-road tires to the ones that have been sitting in the unauthorized sites for an extended period.
So, for example, if a site has 1 million tires and it's been cleaned up, do you know what happens to the majority of those tires that have been cleaned up from a legal dump site? I mean, maybe Kevin, you know.
It depends on the site.
No, we had a site that was cleaned up in the San Antonio area, and I think it was like 1.2 million tires, and those ended up going to our landfill. Now, you know, we did have the Gatesville site as well that was cleaned up recently, and I think some of those went to a tire-derived fuel for cement kilns. And that's another issue, and I don't know if we followed up with this advisory committee with an update on this, but y'all know tires that come from an unauthorized site they would trigger the definition of a secondary hazardous material or non-hazardous secondary waste, and subject to more stringent emission standards based on an EPA rule. We worked closely, Gene and Megan and the tire folks, you know, they worked closely with EPA to try to get us some relief on that. And basically, they came to the conclusion that if you're removing up to 2% of the metal from those tires, extracting 2% of the metal content, they can be burned as a fuel with no additional emission requirements. So that went a long way in getting that approval to accept those tires. You know, it just takes funding to pick up these tires from these unauthorized dump sites. So, and we're continuing to explore options for that, so.
On the ones that have been dumped, is that usually like a special appropriation that for the 1 million plus ones? I mean, because that's a lot of money.
It is. I know in the past there was special appropriations designated for sites, but, you know, we're trying to get creative in the way that we get these cleaned up. You know, some of them are in major metropolitan areas where the real estate they sit on is fairly valuable, and that's how the agency was able to partner with a potential buyer on the property in San Antonio that had 1.2 million tires on it. You know, there were some tax liens associated with the property and other circumstances. So we kind of worked and partnered with the city, the county, and everyone had to give up a little bit of something in order to get that tire site cleaned up. So.
I don't mean the special appropriation is bad. I think the tires need to be cleaned up, so I didn't mean to say a special
No, I knew you did.
I didn't want that to come across that way.
No, very good.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Megan? Not? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Cassidy Campbell, the Senior Environment and Development Planner with the North Central TexasCOG, and she's going to give us a little information on a regional recycling survey and campaign that they had up there. So welcome, Cassidy, for coming up this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this morning on our regional recycling survey and education campaign. I am Cassidy Campbell with the North Central TexasCOG in the Environment and Development Department, and I manage our solid waste program. And today I'm going to cover a high-level overview of the education campaign that we developed in partnership with several contractors and our Resource Conservation Council that we now call Know What to Throw. So first, just a brief overview of the North Central TexasCOG. Most of you are probably familiar with the COG, but we are a non-regulatory organization, and we serve our local governments in attempting to address regional needs and issues and challenges. And in our Environment and Development Department, we cover a wide range of sustainability, environment, and development initiatives. And one of those is our solid waste program. The solid waste program is funded through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and the program is guided and supported by our Resource Conservation Council, otherwise known as our Solid Waste Advisory Committee. The RCC also allocates funding for this program, and they made the determination for the FY 2018-2019 biennium to allocate approximately $660,000 towards this regional recycling survey and education campaign. So you might be wondering, why recycling, why regional level, why did we initiate this campaign? Well, The first thing that actually kind of initiated everything related to recycling was the North Central Texas COG conducted a survey in 2015, and the results of that regional survey, where we had requested stakeholders to provide feedback to us regarding many of the solid waste challenges they felt that were the most significant things facing the region going forward. And the resounding response to that was recycling was a challenge, specifically residential curbside recycling. So fast forward about 1.5 years, and we were working with our RCC to develop a budget allocation for how we were going to spend the money in FY 18-19, and we had several members of our RCC come forward and say, we need to address recycling, we need to do it now, it needs to be addressed on a regional level, and it needs to be aggressive. So, and then two of their main concerns that came up in discussion repeatedly was low residential recycling participation rates and high contamination rates. And so as we moved forward in these discussions with the RCC members, the goal was made to educate residents how to recycle more and recycle right. And the way that we determined was the best solution to try to go about doing this was to develop a campaign that we could amplify across the entire region with very simple and consistent messaging to help residents know what to throw, to empower them to know what was recyclable and what wasn't. So the process that the campaign development took was lengthy. The very first step that we took is actually not indicated on this slide, but we obviously realized that the scale of this project and the expertise needed was not something that COG could do in-house. So we went out for a request for proposals, and we ended up hiring contractors. Our lead contractor was Burns & McDonnell, and our subcontractors was Emerge Knowledge and the Recycling Partnership. So in the kickoff meetings that we had with our contractors and with our RCC and advisory group, we ended up having an advisory group of volunteers consisting of RCC members, and then the region at large. We had experts from around the region and stakeholders, people concerned in recycling, and then also communications experts come together to advise us as we developed this project. And in the course of the first kickoff discussions, it was strongly recommended that we try to make a really good effort at collecting some relevant, accurate, and recent data to help guide the campaign so that we can make sure that we were targeting our messaging in the right areas. So the first 3 components of our campaign development was actually data collection. The Emerge Knowledge, some of you may be familiar with Retract Connect, and Emerge Knowledge actually developed a campaign or a survey specific to our region in North Central Texas to help us gather as much information as we could regarding curbside recycling programs in our region and outreach and education programs that were already at work and whether or not people were having success with it. So for one example of the questions that we asked were, what type of curbside setup? Do you use bags, bins, carts? And if you do have an education and outreach campaign, what are you doing? Do you do utility bill inserts? Do you do Facebook? Do you do billboards? Give us an idea of what you're actually putting out there. And then also, if you have an indication of success, let us know how that's going. Then the second component of the data collection was a waste characterization study. The purpose of this study was to try to gather as much data as we could on valuable recyclables that were ending up in the waste stream. So Burns & McDonnell subcontracted with a sort crew, and we had 10 cities volunteer their time and waste to participate in this study, and they took waste, they collected waste samples from within their cities and delivered it to Dallas McComas Bluff landfill, and the sort crew went through the trash to sort out recyclables from waste, and then that data was analyzed by Burns & McDonnell. Third component was material recovery facility survey, and this again was conducted by Burns & McDonnell. And what they did was they went to all of the MRFs in our region and interviewed them, essentially, asking them questions like, what do you see in your recycling waste in your recycling stream that you don't want there, that is damaging your equipment, endangering your employees, causing fires, is a hazard? Or is just simply not valuable? And then what are you not seeing enough of? What would you like to see more that is highly valuable that you're not seeing that you would like to see more? So then, after all of this data was analyzed and collected, the next step was the regional workshops. And so the North Central Texas COG hosted a series of workshops, and the data was reviewed during these workshops, and the advisory group that I mentioned before listened to this information and helped us guide and develop the campaign, rather helped the recycling partnership develop the campaign. And so what the recycling partnership did to develop Know What to Throw was they took the feedback received in these workshops and made Know What to Throw happen. And then the campaign implementation, which of course was initiated by COG. I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. So Know What to Throw. As I mentioned before, the main intent behind this whole campaign was to have a clear and consistent message that would be relevant across the region. Then it was also discussed during those workshops that it would maybe be better, the recycling partnership, the experts in this area said that it would probably be better to, instead of trying to fight the battle on two fronts and address participation and contamination, to focus on one. And the determination was made by the advisory group to focus on contamination for several reasons, one of which being that it was perceived that it would possibly be lower hanging fruit to try to educate people that are wish cycling, that are maybe throwing things into their recycle bin that are not recyclable, than it is to try to get people on board and recycle and participate if they're not already doing so. The goal was to have the promotional activities initially led by COG. As a regional entity, we have a unique position in being able to spread and amplify messaging. And so we were responsible for the initial push. And then the idea was that all of our cities, counties, and special districts would jump on board and help amplify and sustain this messaging going forward and carry through the momentum. So indicated on this slide is an example of what I'm talking about as far as the simplicity of the messaging and trying to use graphics and small amounts of text because people are really busy. It's hard to keep attention spans, and so trying to keep the message high level and as simple as possible and as digestible as possible. So some other components that is important to know about Know What to Throw. Everything revolves back to the Time to Recycle website. Time to Recycle was developed by COG actually several years ago, but it received a facelift and an update this year in order to be ready for this campaign launch. The idea behind it was that it was already there. It's a great resource. It's a great regional resource. And then also, as you can see indicated on the slide here, we have a North Texas recycling locator where you can pop in something that you are hoping to recycle, your address, and you can put in how many miles you're willing to drive, hit enter, and then it will pop up with different options you have for recycling that item. And then, as I mentioned, there's also a lot of other resources on there too, as far as what is recyclable, what is not, much more detailed information if people want to go into it. Another important component of Know What to Throw was the Do You Know What to Throw quiz. The idea behind the quiz, which is also housed on Time to Recycle, is that people like a challenge. So this is a 9-question quiz where people can test their recycling IQ, and they can also share the results on Facebook. And so the idea behind the quiz is to help amplify the messaging by getting people excited about something and challenging themselves and passing the message along. And then also learning as they go through the quiz, they'll know which questions they got wrong and be able to adjust what they're recycling. The other important part of the quiz was that it will hopefully give us an idea of where we started to compare to maybe 2 years from now, and we can see if the questions are getting answered more accurately. Obviously, it's not statistically sound because people that are really good recyclers might be the only ones taking the quizzes, but still, it will help us just collect as much data as we can. Another item is the coordinated launch topics that we have, and I have an example of what we did for a coordinated launch topic. And basically, every month, the region pushes out the same messaging or very consistent messaging as much as possible regarding a certain item to keep out of your recycle bin. So one of the ones that we did was keep tanglers out because that's something that showed up multiple times as far as the major concern for the MRFs, and that includes chains, ropes, hoses, items of that nature that wrap around equipment and cause slowdowns and expensive repairs. So these coordinated launch topics, the idea behind those is my understanding, which is very limited from what I've heard from the experts, is that when a message is pushed out by COG and then amplified, and you're getting the same message about no tanglers in Mesquite and Garland and Dallas and Fort Worth, that the social media algorithms pick up on that and they recognize that the content is relevant to the users. And so instead of it being flagged as spam or non-useful, it can help amplify the messaging and get pushed out to more and more people. And it has a snowball effect, a good snowball effect. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk more, or a little bit more in detail, about the paid promotional activities that we rolled out in association with this campaign. We tried to attack it on all fronts to make the message get spread as far and wide as possible, and to get as many people, we wanted to be as inclusive as possible. Some people are only digital now this age, and some people really don't use their cell phones, they only use print, and so we did both to try to capture everybody. And the Recycling Partnership also developed a toolkit for us and for our region of customizable templates that can be used for the cities. So for example, I have on the slide here a utility bill insert that was developed by Garland, and so they were able to add their logo and their specific city contact information, and they're also able to edit out the icons if they so desire. But that way, people can download them and it's very easy. So even people that might not have extra staff to do that should be able to download these and pop everything in there and then print it out, send it to their residents if they wish. So there's several different options for the customizable templates. We had, as the example of the utility bill insert, we have oops tags, which cities can attach to their residents' recycling carts if they notice contamination, and they can just check the box of whatever it was that they contaminated their recycling bin with, maybe food. And so we also had info cards and all different types of materials that you could use, that you could edit specific to your city. And also it's important to note, since we're talking about being as inclusive as possible and reaching as many people, we also have almost all of the customizable templates are available in 3 different languages. We had English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So to give you an indication of the type of promotional activities that we did, we really, as I mentioned, tried to hit this on about every level. We had electronic billboards all around the region. We had buses, trains, benches, and posters, and that included DART, Dallas Area Rapid Transit, and Fort Worth buses and benches. We had radio ads, movie theater ads, and we had print and digital media. And for the print media, it was Dallas Morning News, Eldea, Star Telegram, Fort Worth Star Telegram, and Community Impact. And so the print media is for all of those newspapers that actually went to people's door, their porch or driveway. And then on the flip side, the digital media, we also did for all of those same newspapers, but for the digital subscribers. And so people would see banners coming across the screen for, if they were logging in to see an article that the Fort Worth Star Telegram put out. We also performed social media outreach, paid social media, well, paid and unpaid, but here specifically is for the paid. We did Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Google display ads. And then we also had printed materials. And the printed materials was an option that was requested by the RCC to provide entities in our region an opportunity to come forward to us with a request for free printed materials, and then COG handled coordinating with the vendor, getting materials printed and delivered, well, not delivered, but picked up by our entities. So an example of that is what I showed on the previous slide of the utility bill inserts by Garland and the oops tags by City of Arlington. Those were some of the people that opted in and ended up ordering a significant amount of those printed materials that they'll be able to push the outreach to their residents for months and months. So I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on the analytics, partly because it's not my area of expertise and I don't want to be lying to anybody, but I did think that this slide was really interesting. It's encouraging to me. The top chart there that you can see is a time frame from June 1st to August 31st. And this is the website traffic that we receive at Time to Recycle. NCTCOG officially launched this campaign on June 3rd. And so as you can see in that chart there, we are averaging over 500 users per day, which sounds really great to me. But one of the reasons I wanted to show this slide to you is because if you look at the chart on the bottom, you can see that that's the time frame of Time to Recycle website traffic from January 1st, 2019 to September 30th. And you'll notice if you look from January to June, there's not a whole lot of activity, and then all of a sudden, as soon as we launch the campaign, it just spikes, and it stays spiked. And so to me, that's encouraging because it means that even if the message isn't being received and digested, it's getting out there. People are seeing it, and people are actually going to the website, and they're clicking on it, and hopefully they're at least retaining some of it. So then this too is just an indication of, to give you an idea of what these impressions and engagements are related to, we spent about $8,000 on paid social media engagements. The majority of that was on Facebook. And so you can see the number of impressions and engagements and the link clicks. And so it's helpful to see how many people are actually getting eyes on these ads for a relatively small amount of money. This is one of the only ones that we can actually track for the billboard and movie theater ads. Those are just estimates. So then the quiz, the Know What to Throw quiz. I thought this slide would be interesting. It was interesting to me, partly because we had over 45,000 people view the quiz. We have so far had over 7,000 people take the quiz. And of the 7,000 quiz takers, 85% that started it actually completed the quiz. But what I thought was really cool and exciting and encouraging is that if you look, more than 50% of the people got one question or less wrong. So, and I know that that's, again, people that are experts in statistics would say it's not maybe an accurate random sample, but to me, it's exciting because it indicates that we just really need to tweak things from a contamination standpoint, because you can see only 4% of people that took the quiz got 4 or less questions incorrect. And so maybe people are really, really close to getting it right, and we're just getting contaminated with a small amount of stuff, and that will get fixed with this campaign. Okay, so the next steps. Obviously, it's very important for us to continue the momentum. The goal is to continue to amplify this message regionally for at least the next 2 years. That is the guidance that we've received and the request that we've received from our RCC. Currently, COG is not putting any funding behind it. That could change, but right now we're simply doing organic, unpaid social media posts. But I do send out an email every 2 weeks to anybody in our region who's interested, to remind them to continue to repost and like and post their own social media posts. It includes a schedule of when we plan to post so that people know when to jump in so that we can amplify the messaging as effectively as possible. And then also just encouraging cities that aren't already participating or that would like to participate more, that in any capacity that they're able to join into this campaign, it really helps. And if they've found that the best way to reach out to their constituents is through utility bill inserts, do that if you can. If you found that it's Facebook or Twitter or any other kind of medium, just do what you can, and also ask COG. We do have resources. And then additionally, we are going to be performing 2 more waste characterization studies. The goal is to use the additional waste characterization studies to compare to the baseline data that was received during the October 2018 sort. And so we have one scheduled for November of this year, and then another one that will take place in the October to November timeframe of 2020. So hopefully that will show us that we are moving the needle in the right direction and that we are reducing contamination in our region, and maybe even participation, or increasing participation rather. So that's really all that I had planned to discuss today, so now I can take any questions.
I've got a quick question. Do you have any analysis at all, or any guesswork at all based on the survey of the most common questions that people got wrong. If most people got only one or none wrong, is there any trend, I mean, any conclusions you can draw on the most common mistakes?
Yes, and I actually unfortunately did not include that slide, and I cannot remember off the top of my head which one was the most missed. Scott might. Okay, so Scott does, but we actually do have those like specific drill down analytics that we can gather. And so we do have a quiz score distribution.
What'd you say, Heather?
Bags.
Bags, yes, yes. The number one question that people got wrong the most was plastic bags. So like Cassidy said, there is a slide, and we actually presented with the Recycling Partnership yesterday at the STAR Summit on this project. So there's like a million more slides, and one of those is the one that Cassidy referred to, where it shows for the 8 or 9 different questions how they stacked up, and plastic bags was the one that folks got wrong the most. And to me, that's really important, is that future aspects of this campaign can then potentially be tweaked or emphasized depending on what those quiz answers are.
Cassidy, it may be a good idea to give this quiz to the advisory committee.
Well, I just took it, so it's 7,001 people have taken it. It's a very good quiz. The plastic bag question is a little tricky on the wording. It says, is a plastic bag that has recyclable markings on it recyclable, or something like that. And it is recyclable, but you don't want it into your curbside collection. So, but that's good.
Well, thank you for taking the quiz. That helps amplify the message. Share your results.
Okay, you made us all look bad now, thank you.
No.
Yeah. What, you going to volunteer your score?
No. I had one wrong. I joined the 50%ers. I had one wrong.
Recycling is confusing, hence the regional high-level messaging, so.
Okay, not a question, but as I just mentioned, we did present yesterday at the STAR Summit on this project, and so we had a handout that we provided to the participants just to communicate the simplicity of what the campaign's intended to communicate. And I've got some extra copies that I can pass around if you want to learn more about the overall project. So on one side, it also communicates information about the project, and there's also the website that you can go to. And so everything that the Recycling Partnership did, Emerge Knowledge, and Burns & Mac, through the data analysis as well as the workshop materials, it's all on the COG's website. So there's a lot more information out there that you can get access to. And then something else that is still being developed, but Alita Kane, who was there from the Recycling Partnership, mentioned yesterday in her presentation to the group, is that the Recycling Partnership is planning to continue its investment in this project in the North Central Texas region. So I think a lot of those details are still being worked out, but that was really some exciting news, and hopefully at the next council meeting I can report back to the group as far as some of the next steps to be taken in that regard.
Thank you, Scott. I had a question on the graph with the analytics, if we could go back to it. Just probably didn't understand it very well. Okay, right there. Explain the bottom graph again, and because I was curious about, you had a pretty good spike, and then it looked like it leveled off again, but at a level higher than when it started anyway. So I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question, and I should have mentioned that. So yes, this is the same chart that you're looking at above and below. It's just a different time frame. And so you can see we launched the campaign on June 3rd, 2019, which is where you see the initial spike. And we carried through the paid promotional activities very heavily through the next 3 months. And so they ended on August 31st, 2019. And so that's where you actually see the drop off. So the paid promotional activities, I think, were very effective. And I think probably, and this is just speculation on my part since I'm not very good at analyzing the analytics, but what I would presume is that once we start getting into September, a lot of this is moving off of momentum, or it's repeat users that have remembered the website and are coming back to it to review additional information.
Great, thank you. No other questions? Cassidy, thank you so much for coming up and presenting this, and best of luck. And it's really great that you got a lot of the buy-in from a lot of your member cities and I guess counties also in the area. That's the biggest part of these things, is you can do it all you want, but if you don't get the buy-in from your member communities, it kind of doesn't go anywhere. It looks like you've got some good momentum going.
I think so, and thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity, and if anybody has any questions that come up later, feel free to contact me. And yes, we have wonderful member partners, and we have a wonderful Resource Conservation Council that is very engaged and participates and helps us a lot. We very much value their expertise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next on our list is someone, one of our own, an advisory council, and Risa Weinberger is going to talk a little bit about a subject near and dear to her heart, composting rules. And you want to do it from here, or do you want to step up to the podium?
If it's okay with everybody else, I'll just do it from here. Is that, or, I mean,
yeah,
I'll go up there if you want, but
no, that's fine.
I've got a microphone, and
I
I hope everybody can hear me from here. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up now is because I received a letter from one of the larger compost manufacturers in the state, and that letter actually brought up points that I have heard from other composters or compost manufacturers in the state in the past, so I know there's a fair amount of concern about this topic. First of all, before I read the letter to you that I received, and I put some up here for handouts if you didn't get one when you came in, if you would like one. Let me just give you a little bit of background in case you're not up to speed on some of this. The permitting rules, or I'll call them permitting rules for all the composting facilities, state that you have to have a someone with a MSW processing facility operator's license associated with the facility. And so we traditionally call those processing licenses the B licenses. So what the operators have to do now is they take the B course, which is the MSW processing facility operators course, and they take an exam. And then in order to maintain that license, they have to get continuing education and get CEUs, or continuing education units, to keep their licenses current. And then for the processors, the composters that have either registered or permitted facilities, there's a requirement that they get another training piece that is specific to composting. And the agency has approved, several training opportunities for that. And just, I want to say that I think requiring a license for the operators is a wonderful thing. I am not arguing about that one bit, because composting facilities, especially the bigger ones, are pretty complex operations. They've got a whole lot of moving parts. And if you are trained and you know what you're doing, those operations can be clean, very effective, and very beneficial from an environmental point of view. If you don't know what you're doing, you can make a big mess pretty fast. So, I think it's great to have that training requirement. Let me just read this letter, and this is from John Niedecken, who is the Chief Operating Officer of New Earth. Background on that: New Earth has 3 large composting facilities in the state at the registration tier, and they compost not only green waste, yard waste, but both pre-consumer and post-consumer food residuals and biosolids at those facilities. And then they've got another facility that's an exempt tier facility. And their chief operating officer sent this letter. He says, this letter is inquiring about the process and shed light on some inefficiencies that currently exist in the licensing requirements for the MSWB license as it specifically relates to composters. This summer I enrolled in a class to begin the process of obtaining my MSWB license. Per TCEQ guidelines, that meant sitting through a 3-day course that was focused primarily on items that had nothing to do with composting. For example, topics covered including transfer stations, landfill permitting, medical waste, landfill operations, landfill signage, truck washout, and any other number of items that didn't have anything to do with composting. Of the 8 chapters we studied, composting was only a small portion of one of the chapters, and I would say made up less than 10% of our time in the course. The next issue with this process is that since I am pursuing my MSWB license for a compost facility, I am required to take an additional 8-hour class. Now, he's only required to take that additional 8-hour class because he has registration tier facilities, okay? But he says he was required to take an additional 8 hours of classes specifically pertaining to compost. Aside from feeling like the 3 days were wasted in class and now preparing for a test that is not pertinent to composting, I am now required to sit through an additional 8 hours. If there is specific curriculum already tailored toward composters, then why can't we just take that class for our license and test versus the time wasted in a current course only to still take a compost-specific class? The path to MSWB licensing for composters does not seem like an efficient process, and I feel like a review of the steps involved for composters to receive licensing is worthy of your time and review. If I can provide additional information, please don't hesitate to call. So, the bottom line is, the feeling is the B course, which is the processing course, does not really inform the composting facility operators as they would like it to, and therefore doesn't achieve the objective of making those more professional, cleaner, better operations. That is everybody's goal, everybody in the industry, and I know TCEQ's goal also. And it's expensive and it's time consuming to do that. There are other compost training courses available that people can take. There's one starting Monday, as a matter of fact, and I understand that several people in this room, I think, are going to be there. That's the what we typically call Compost Summit. It's by the Texas Compost Council, which is a council of STAR. That is a Texas-specific course. It's 2.5 days that is just composting. And by the way, thank you to the agency for providing speakers. I believe 3 speakers this year. Typically, it's either 2 or 3 speakers from TCEQ that provide information for the attendees on the specific requirements of the composting rules in Texas. But there are, and that's a relatively inexpensive course, okay? But then if you want another course beyond that, you can go to SWANA at WasteCon. You can go to, BioCycle has a big conference. You can go to the U.S. Compost Council. They all have training, and some of them have certifications. Those run typically in the neighborhood of about $1,000 just to take the course, and then all the travel expenses associated with that. You're easily up over $2,000 to take one of those other courses, and that's for somebody who's decided that they really want to learn composting beyond what's in the B course, or they're at that tier where they need some additional training. So I guess my question to the agency is there an opportunity for those of us in the business possibly to sit down with the folks in permitting and the folks in training and licensing to visit this whole situation? Because the industry wants a high level of professionalism, and they want to be trained, and they are all about getting operators licenses, but as the situation exists right now, it's just not helping us achieve that. So the question is, can we talk?
Reset. Yes, we would be glad to help facilitate that. You know, that's handled by a different group in our.
I understand that.
And it's all in the Office of Waste, but we can coordinate that meeting, and we'll be glad to participate as well, because I understand your points and somewhat frustration here. And I'm just curious, is it because it sounds like this training covers landfill operations as well as medical waste facilities.
It's
because
all
they
over
all
the
require
map.
Class B license.
That's all some of the topics that are covered in the Class B license, because those are processors,
Right.
okay? And there's, processing is grease and grit trap and tires and medical waste and everything on this list and a lot of other things.
And do you have some ideas on how this could be more efficient if you're pursuing a Class B license for a composting operation? It seems like you could have a course specific to that. I don't have the answer
and
yet.
what I was
It's
trying to say is there are already courses that are available. Some are already certification courses. Some are not. Some are specific to Texas. Some are more general. But there's all kinds of training material already out there. Or, the other option is rewrite the B course and put more composting in there. But still, I hate to see somebody who's running a big composting facility, and as you know, we've got more and more and more of those people coming online. But I hate to see them spend even half their time learning about something that has absolutely nothing to do with what they do. So,
and that may be something worth examining right there. I mean, there's no need for a composting operator to take medical waste training.
right. I actually know one operator who needed his CEUs, and he couldn't go to Compost Summit that year. He had a conflict that year, so he had to take a transfer station course. He doesn't need a transfer station course. He'll never operate a transfer station, but that's what he had to do. So that doesn't achieve anybody's objective. It took him a week, several $1,000s, and he came out mad that he had to do that. Okay.
Well, we'll be glad to facilitate that.
I feel fairly certain that we can find a few people that'll be interested in participating in that.
Okay.
So thank you. Okay. The second topic is very, 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 very brief. It's almost a public service announcement for folks that are in the composting industry. You may or may not realize that most of the composting facilities, the compost manufacturers in Texas, are authorized through the MSW rules. But there are a number of them that are authorized through the water rules, because there is a separate program for composting biosolids, and those are managed by people with wastewater licenses, and typically on wastewater facilities. It's just to put the word out there, if you didn't already know, the 312 rules, which are the sludge rules, the biosolids rules, are being adjusted to properly codify what has been policy in the past, which is that if a composter of biosolids is operating on within the permitted boundary of a wastewater plant, they're authorized on the water side. If they're operating anywhere else, they're operated on the MSW side. There was actually a hole in the rules, that kind of a loophole that was unintentional, that allowed some biosolids composters to be authorized by the water people, and those facilities operated by people with wastewater operator licenses that were not located on wastewater plants. So it's just, I just wanted to mention that if you're following this business at all, that's just something to be aware of, and you may want to consider participating in the comment period on those rules. And
I think those were proposed yesterday at agenda. So the comment period just opened.
Comment period just opened. So I think that's a really good thing. I think it'll be an improvement. Someday I'd like to think that all of the requirements for composting facilities will be similar and managed together. That's not where we are, but at least this is getting closer to a more harmonized process. And just lastly, again, thank you very much to the agency for providing speakers to the compost training, the compost summit that's going to happen next week in San Antonio. And also thank you, I realize it's not your group, but thank you to the agency for authorizing CEUs, not only for the classroom training, but also for the equipment demonstration. Because if you're a composter, you need to know not only a little biology, a little chemistry, a little physics, a lot of equipment, a lot of materials handling. You really need to know about a huge range of very specialized, expensive equipment, or else you can't do your job properly. And so I'm very happy to see that the agency has approved continuing education units for the equipment demonstration at Compost Summit next week, which at one point was a question. So I'm glad to see that happen. I wish that the CEUs could also be issued to the wastewater operator license holders as well as the MSW operator license holders. Thank you.
Thank you, Risa. Anyone have any questions or comments for Risa before we move on? Okay, well, in your packet, you'll find the draft meeting minutes from our July 11th, 2019 meeting. And I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look those over. I'll give everyone a few minutes. And if someone's ready, I'll entertain a motion to approve those as presented.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Got a motion from Richard McHale. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jeff Mayfield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. So we have a list also for proposed meeting dates in 2020. There's an option on the January meeting. Guess there's a conflict in here in the morning of the 9th, which would be our normal date. So we could meet on that day in the afternoon or push it back a week to the 16th for in the morning. Did receive an email from one member that said they could not make the 9th but could make the 16th. So I guess that's one vote for the 16th. I have no qualms on either one. I don't know what the rest of the council would feel. What helps you guys from your daily schedules, morning or afternoon? The morning. So 16th. Okay, Diane. So we will do the morning of the 16th, and then the other days, April the 9th, July the 9th, and October the 8th. So if those dates look fine, then Diane will put those on the calendar and send everybody an email reminder about those. Do we have any action items left over from previous meetings, Diane? I think anything we had, we covered. The tires, yeah. So I think that kind of cleared up our action items. So at this point, I'll open the floor for any public comments for anyone that's out in the audience today. If you'd like to come right up to the podium. So, and state your name and your affiliation, and go ahead.
Thank you. Helen Gilbert, for the record, with Gilbert Wilburn. I have a question and a comment. My first question is, does anybody, particularly the county commissioners and judges, have sort of a statewide list of all the county solid waste siting ordinances? Is there such a thing? Or is it just case by case? Chuck, do you know?
I'm not aware of a list. You have to kind of brew through it. I can, if you hang on.
We know of the counties that have them when we find out through litigation or otherwise, but.
Yeah, it's a shorter list than you may think. If you want, I'll help you kind of recreate what I know. Not that it's all encompassing, but what I
Okay,
know.
appreciate that. In Risa, to your update on the 312 rules, this is something I was visiting with Chance about earlier. I can't speak to the compost component of that, but the version of the rules that was proposed will probably be proposed tomorrow because they published in the Texas Register on Fridays. That got approved yesterday. Has a very confusing reference to the 330 or 332 rules, such that in the sludge rules, they've changed the definition of treatment and stabilization and processing so that some things that weren't considered processing with a capital P before are now called processing, which trigger some sort of authorization under 330 or 332. So that's not the scenario where you have a co-located MSW processing facility, like a dewatering situation at a wastewater treatment plant. This would be like a biosolids site that's doing something at the site that triggers the processing definition. And so what I'm getting at is, I don't know, but we're going to find out what level of MSW authorization that would require on top of the 312 registration so that it's not a duplicative process.
Well, if anybody wants to correct any of this from TCEQ, please do. But my understanding is that if you are composting biosolids, okay, and you, with these new rules in place, if you are not doing it at a wastewater treatment plant, then that is a registration tier authorization from TCEQ. At least a registration tier, could be a permit tier depending on what other feedstocks go in there, but it's at least a registration tier authorization from TCEQ, and that is through the 332 rules, which is the composting rules, and the 330 rules, where there's a little bit of overlap between the two.
So the new 312 rules will include a reference to the 332 rules or what have you, and that's good to close that gap or what have you. But there's this totally other component of maybe liquid waste that's not going to a compost facility. So anyway, I guess your point is well made. Look at the rules and comment. And
right.
I think there's a while.
That was my only reason for bringing that up, because, you know, if we're all solid waste managers in this room, you know, there is some substantial overlap there, and we probably should get involved in the sludge rules a little bit for a moment.
Overlap would be good if it's not duplication. You know, recycling site that has to get an air permit, that's a pretty streamlined process because it's just a standard air permit. Doesn't make sense to have two standalone kind of authorizations. And I have a lot of
personal opinion, I'd rather have one system for all of the composters, but that's not the, you know, we had biosolids composting sort of develop on both sides of the house, if that's a fair way to state it, and that's how they ended up in two sets of rules. And they're quite different. You know, the process you have to go through to get a biosolids composting facility authorized through MSW is very different than the process you have to go through to get the same facility authorized through water.
Agreed. And then just the last point, we've talked a little bit about grandfathering. I like that concept, but it was repealed on a statewide process a long time ago. So I don't know that that gives facilities much leg to stand on. That's all I had. If y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So you're saying that composting facilities,
not necessarily composting, maybe the biosolids facilities that are currently doing this treatment process. You know, one comment was, well, they're grandfathered. Well, really, there's no grandfathering at TCEQ anymore.
Okay, and this is kind of hearsay. I thought I understood that existing currently authorized biosolids composting facilities that were done on the water side that are not on wastewater plants are grandfathered to the extent that they don't have to now go through the MSW permitting process, that they're authorized through the water side.
Well,
Is that not correct?
let me just say, I need to look at that, and I barely have since
Okay.
it became available. But, and this is not a legal opinion, there is not statewide at a state agency grandfathering anymore the way there used to be under the government code. So
Then that's going to be
I
an
like
issue.
that, but you're kind of at the whim of
Yeah.
who's interpreting
Because
the rule.
there's at least one that I know of, and maybe more than one, that would, if there's no grandfathering, they would have to back up and go through the MSW process now to get a new authorization.
And certainly, if they ever come in for a mod or an amendment, then it's a whole new thing.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
I'm certain glad the comment period is open for this Chapter 312 rulemaking. Those are comments that the Water Department will definitely want to hear.
Anyone else from the audience that'd like to address the council? Miss. Hello, Sarah.
Ooh, I'm so much louder. 300 communities all across the state, many of which are small and rural. Some work with their local government, others don't. All are very good at engaging volunteers to do community-wide cleanups. Wondering if there are any funding mechanisms to help assist with these cleanups, or perhaps the purchasing of equipment to, quarter tires to go into landfills, apart from the COG solid waste grants, because not all of our communities are going to qualify for that grant funding. So I don't know of a whole lot of funding that's out there, but if y'all know of anything creative or otherwise. It is a huge issue. It's an issue that we hear about a lot. So I'm just trying to provide some more resources to the folks that we work with.
Well, certainly that would be a great thing if there was a source for funding, but to my knowledge, nothing exists at the moment, except, like I said, through the COG money.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just through the COG. Would there be a possibility of having through the COG a regional solid waste or regional tire collection event, like for an entire region, maybe?
Potentially, and I know that some of our groups have done that. I think also it's just availability of funding. Some of those grants are more competitive than other areas and other COGs. And then timing also, I think, is an issue with those solid waste grants. So there is always that possibility, but I didn't know if anyone knew of any other, silver bullet for that. I know that tires are always a fun topic of discussion for this group, so cool.
Earl, what about the supplemental environmental protection funds? Aren't there funds available for?
Yes. I'm not familiar with all the details of that program, but it's based on a enforcement activity where an entity could request their funding go towards an environmental cleanup project. We would have to get someone from that program to come and talk about it. It's enforcement.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting to learn more about how that process works, because I know it's maybe a little bit confusing or convoluted, so could be a potential future agenda item.
Yeah, we could get someone to come in, provide a presentation on that.
Is Keep Texas Beautiful, or are you're statewide, I know, but are you broken up into regions or districts?
We're not.
You're not?
No.
I was trying to think if there's some overlap with the COGs. But.
Nope, we work all across the state.
Do you have a specific region that you're being asked to target within your organization?
I think probably West Texas. I get a lot of questions from, but really just our smaller rural communities in general. So we have a lot of communities that are 5,000, 2,000 and under. And it can be cost prohibitive for them to be able to take on these kind of projects. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else in the audience would you like to come up and address the council? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you very much. We'll close this meeting and adjourn and look forward to seeing everyone on the 16th of January. Thank you.